I've been tending to plants for a while now. Through the process, I've learned so much how to better care and love the plants that I have in my home. When I first started, there were a lot of plants that did not make it because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea that all different plants need to be watered at different times. In this chapter, I'm gonna teach you the best ways to water your plants, how to figure out when that plant actually needs moisture, and how to give it the moisture it needs. The one thing is to always understand what type of plant you have and then understand what type of moisture level that particular plant needs. You can either find that on the tag when you first buy that plant. If it's not there, maybe ask an associate that works at that plant shop. Plants are all different, so they're all gonna require a different type of moisture when it comes to their soil. So this Australian fern here, its moisture level when it comes to its soil needs to be evenly moist. While some plants, let's say like your ZZ plants, they need their soil to become completely dry before you give it water. So knowing what types of plants you're bringing into your homes help you initiate that process of at least knowing when to then start to give your plant a drink. Now, there are some signs when to water that plant. You'll see it in the lifelessness of your foliage. The leaves are kind of fainting, they'll curl. That is a plant that is thirsty, ready, screaming out, please give me some water. Here is a marble queen, example of the same plant. As you can see, same plant, but there's a big difference. You can see it in the way the foliage is all upright, happy, excited, has more bounce to it because it has had water. Before you get into that, you shouldn't have to wait until your leaves start to droop or faint. You should be checking your soil. There's 3 ways to test this. One way is the finger test. Sticking your finger down deep in that soil, about 2 inches down into that soil, bringing your finger up, and if there's moisture, dirt on your finger, that is a well-watered plant. You can also grab yourself a skewer, a chopstick, a toothpick, kind of like a cake test. My mom used to bake cakes. She would take a toothpick, stick it down into the cake to see if it was ready. I do that same process with my plants. So if you stick it into the soil and it comes up dry, that is a plant that needs to be watered. Now, there's one last process you can do. Some of us like to be more, I guess, in tuned, I'll say, with our plants, and knowing exactly when it's time to water your plants can be simpler. If you're not someone that wants to stick your fingers into the soil, you can use some sort of moisture meter where you can then take that moisture meter, again, stick it down into the soil. And like I mentioned here, this plant should be moist. You'll see that meter read right there. So this is a plant that I would not water until it became a little bit more dry, but that's a better way of giving yourself a clear, more, I would say, accurate understanding of if your plant needs to be watered or if it should remain dry for a few extra days. When you're thinking about signs of whether it's underwatered, like I said, drying leaves, maybe brown spots on the edges of your leaves, fainting leaves, curling leaves, that's a clear sign that that's a underwater plant. An overwatered plant, signs like yellowing leaves. That's a clear sign that you have overwatered that plant. So most plant parents, they will kill their plants mainly because of overwatering. So if you're unsure if that plant needs a drink, I would say lean more towards underwatering than overwatering. It's very important to make sure you test the temperature of your water. It's kind of like a parent testing the milk in a baby bottle that they're heating up. You want to make sure that it is warm, not too hot, not too cold. Cold and hot water can shock the roots of your plants. So you want to make sure that it is lukewarm. And when it's time to water it, you're going to water it kind of like a pour over coffee style. You are watering that plant nice and easy, slow and steady around the soil, making sure that all of that moisture goes through that soil, through those roots, so that all those roots have an opportunity to pull that moisture in. And here's the key. You want to make sure that pot, your planter, has a drainage hole. You want that moisture to escape out of the bottom of that pot and into your base tray. At that point, you know you have given your plant enough water. Now, once that water enters into that base tray, you're going to let it sit there 15, 30 minutes. Just in case the roots, the soil didn't get a chance to pull that moisture in. If you see a little bit trickle out, I'm sure over the next 15 minutes, 30 minutes, that water will be pulled back into that pot. Now, if there's water still sitting in that base tray, 15, 30 minutes, you're gonna wanna take your plant off that base tray, dispose of that water, Then put your plant back on top of that base tray and your plant will be good. If you find yourself in a pot that doesn't have a drainage hole, there is a way to give it a little buffer zone for the moisture to go into so that your roots aren't going to be submerged in water. You add a little bit of stones at the base of that pot, then horticultural charcoal to help purify any of the things that are coming into, I would say, your soil. Then you place your soil and your plants on top of there. That buffer zone will allow for that moisture to make its way through and then settle into that buffer so that your roots are never sitting in moisture. If you do have your roots sitting in water, what you'll get there is root rot, and root rot will kill your plants instantly. When it comes to looking for root rot, or if your roots are healthy, best way to understand that is taking your plant out of its pot and checking those roots. Those roots should look more like a al dente noodle, more, hard, off-white coloring. A rotting root will be soft, mushy, dark brown, maybe even black. So that's something that you want to be very aware of. So while you're watering your plants, depending on the types of plants you might have, you might also have to mist them. When it comes to tropical plants, they love humidity, and indoors, it's hard to mimic the same sort of humidity outside. So in order to do so, you might have to mist your plants. So just because you're misting doesn't mean you can get away with not watering your plants. It's not the same thing. The soil, the roots of your plants still need moisture. But when you are misting your plants, you're allowing the foliage to sit in that humidity. So that's key. But never, never mist a cactus. There's no humidity in those dry climates. You wanna make sure that they are in the proper place to not be anywhere around any of that mist when you're misting those other tropical plants in your homes. So friends, that's how you're gonna properly know when and how to water your plants. I'm feeling a little bit thirsty myself. Thank you, and I will see you in the next chapter.